Welcome back to Shire Travels. In this one, we are heading from Cape Tribulation in far north Queensland all the way down the east coast to Brisbane. This is a trip that we've actually done twice, once with just Tom and myself, and then another time with myself, Tom, my sister and her husband as well. Both times we've done this trip, we have been limited on time. So the first time we did this trip, I think we did it in over 10 days. The second time we took 2.5, 3 weeks. This trip would be ideal. Maybe you're coming to Australia from over the seas and want to see some highlights in Queensland. Or maybe like us, you only have a limited amount of annual leave and you want to see some of the top spots in Queensland. Our journey begins up in the Daintree rainforest at Cape Tribulation. We travel to Port Douglas, Palm Cove, Cairns. We head out to Mossman Gorge, Babinda Boulders, have a look around the Atherton Tablelands at places like Miller Falls. We very briefly stop in Townsville. We make our way to the Whitsundays, and at the Whitsundays, when it was just Tom and myself, we did a sailing trip around some of the islands. And when we were there with my sister, we actually stayed on Hamilton Island. Now I've done a completely separate video on Hamilton Island because we've been there a few times and there's so much to see and do. That Hamilton Island video will come out after these Cairns to Brisbane videos. After Hamilton Island, we keep heading down the coast. We stop off in Bundaberg and do a trip out to Lady Musgrave Island. And then we make our way down to Fraser Island. We spend a couple of nights on Fraser. We hire a four-wheel drive and see some of the main sites there. And then we keep heading down to Brisbane. We've done this trip at a couple of different times of year, once in June and once in October. Both times were outside of school holidays, so in terms of booking places, it was fairly straightforward. We didn't have to book anything too early. June was a little bit colder than October, but still warm enough to go swimming in the ocean, swimming at waterfalls. October was slightly rainier, but not too bad, still nice and warm. The trip we did with my sister and her husband, it went for around 3 weeks. So we met up with my sister, we all flew into Cairns. We decided to stay in Palm Cove rather than Cairns because it was somewhere where we hadn't stayed before. I had actually worked up in Cairns for several months but hadn't been to Palm Cove, so wanted to stay there. Really beautiful spot, very relaxed, chilled out, holiday vibe. We just stayed in a very small Airbnb that was walking distance to the beach. We wanted to be close to the beach because we wanted to see sunrise, so we got up very early, watched the sunrise through all the palm trees there, and it was very beautiful. For this trip, we decided to hire a car and then stay in Airbnbs. This worked out cheaper and, to be honest, a lot more easier than trying to hire a motorhome or something like that. When we got to Fraser Island though, we did hire a four-wheel drive through a separate company to take onto the island, as our hire car wasn't a four-wheel drive and couldn't go on there. After watching a beautiful sunrise at Palm Cove, we headed up to the Daintree rainforest. We drove up and we hopped on a ferry to cross the Daintree River. Because we had a bit of time to kill before we could check into our Airbnb, we hopped on a cruise to try and find some crocs on the river. We went with Solar Whisperer. It was a 1-hour cruise and we didn't see any crocs. And if you don't see any crocs, they actually give you a free return ticket. After our time in the Daintree area was over and we were coming back towards the ferry, we actually hopped on another 1-hour tour. And this time we did get to see crocs, which was really good. As we were heading south, we weren't going to have another chance to come back. So we got very lucky and we did manage to spot some crocs. Because we were there in the warmer months, the crocodiles do actually spend most of their time in the water. So they are a little bit harder to see. You don't usually see them out on the banks kind of sunbaking. But still a really good tour. There are heaps of different tour operators that operate along the Daintree doing different croc tours. And I would definitely recommend hopping on one. We head to our accommodation in the Daintree. We stayed fairly close to Cape Tribulation. We wanted to be somewhat central and we were doing a tour the next day which left from Cape Tribulation Beach, so we didn't want to be too far away. Again, we stayed in an Airbnb. It was quite an unusual layout, so it had one bedroom area and kind of a kitchen area in one section and then a separate kind of house up on kind of a hillside. And this house actually had a small plunge infinity pool, which was absolutely freezing, which is quite funny because you're up in the tropics and you expect it to be warm, but it was absolutely freezing. This was a really cool spot to stay because you looked out over the rainforest. In the far, far distance was the ocean, and it really felt like we were in Jurassic Park, particularly Jurassic Park 2 when they're up in the high hide and they can see the dinosaurs coming through the trees. Felt exactly like that. Airbnb was great. It was fairly close to some of the main attractions in the area. The only maybe negative thing that happened there was We didn't realize at night there were bandicoots, and they came out at night and went through everything in the kitchen. We did put stuff away, but they just went through everything. But we didn't realize they were bandicoots. At one point we thought that it was people trying to break in, and Tom got up and he had this little pocket knife, and I don't know what he was going to do if it was someone breaking in. The drive through the Daintree is beautiful. So to get to our accommodation up to Cape Tribulation, where we were picked up by our boat, we had to drive a little way through the Daintree. We got to see a cassowary as well and a couple of chicks, which was really cool. A lot of people go there and don't get to see them. This one just came wandering across the road in front of us. We were also fairly close to the Daintree ice cream company, so we popped in there as well, had a bit of ice cream, which was really good. Our first full day in the Daintree, we did a boat trip out to Michaelman's Cay. This is a sandbank, which is out in the middle of the ocean. So we had to make our way to Cape Tribulation Beach and hop on a boat there. So Cape Tribulation Beach is beautiful. Now they do get crocodiles there, so you do have to be quite cautious. To get onto the boat, we had to go into the water and climb up into the boat, which we were a little bit freaked out about, but there was no crocodiles there as far as we know. Got on the smaller boat, then that took us out to our bigger boat, which is a catamaran that we hopped on, and we were on that for the entire day. Fully inclusive tour, so included all our food, snorkeling gear, and stinger suits if we wanted them. The time of year being October, marine stingers aren't usually present, so we didn't have to wear them. So this was a great tour. I think there were probably 20, 30 people on the boat. Really big boat, lots of spaces to hang out and relax. They had a big netted section at the front that you could lie on. So we sailed out, and at first we did a bit of snorkeling and saw some different areas of the reef. So this is the Great Barrier Reef this far up. That was really fun. We got to see clownfish and lots of different coral. And then we pulled up at Michaelman's Cay, or Michaelman's Key. And the water there was just beautiful, lovely turquoise, clear water, white sandy beach. We hung out there for quite a while, and then we also did some snorkeling there as well. And that's where we got to see our first turtle. That was really exciting because we had never swam with a turtle before. Now later on in the trip we went to Lady Musgrave Island, and there were so many turtles there that by the end of it you're like, oh, another turtle. But at this point, I hadn't swum with one before. It was really exciting. Once our time in the Daintree was over, it was time to start heading south. We stopped off at a couple more places on our way out. The Daintree Ice Cream Company. We did our other croc tour as well, as I mentioned before. It's a really beautiful drive through that Daintree area. Just be aware of lots of motorhomes and tourists, maybe people going a bit slower because they're taking in all the sights. It is quite a windy road as well, so just take your time when you're driving through there. Our next stop was to Mossman Gorge. They have a kind of visitor cultural centre there. You then get on a bus, and the bus will take you down to the gorge. I believe previously you used to be able to park and walk down if you wanted to. It is a fair way to go. It is very touristy, it is very busy. You are shoved onto the bus with heaps of other people. When you get there, there's a bit of room to spread out, but you do kind of have to leave your stuff all together on the bank with everyone else's. In the water, there's a fair bit of room to get around. There's some nice places to sit up on boulders, get a few nice pictures. The water from memory was pretty cold, but it wasn't too bad. They had some beautiful big, I think they are Ulysses butterflies there as well, which kept coming and landing on me. I don't know if it was my sunscreen that they liked or the color of my bracelet or what it was, but they all kept coming and landing on me, which was pretty cool. One thing to be aware of though is bush turkeys. They will get into your bag and rip things apart to try and get your food out. So rather than leaving your bags on the floor, if you can, try and put them up on something to try and keep the turkeys out. Wrap all your food up, zip up your bag if you can, and put stuff on top of it because they are relentless trying to get stuff out of bags. After Mossman, we popped into Port Douglas. We literally went to the lookout and we had a quick look at the beach there. It seemed nice enough. To be honest, I don't quite know why it is such a popular spot. The beach was okay. The accommodation there is very expensive, but it seemed like a nice enough spot. We were heading to the Atherton Tablelands. So again, we've just booked an Airbnb there and our plan was to try and see as many waterfalls as we possibly could. It was a fairly big drive down there and we arrived in the evening. The host very quickly just took us through the accommodation. The accommodation there was pretty good. It was just a unit that someone had next to their main house. It was fairly central to the main waterfalls, so places like Milla Milla. It was also fairly close to Urunga, where you can go and see platypus. We were very lucky, we saw heaps of platypus there. It always surprises me when I see other people's videos going there and they don't see them because we just saw so many and they were out and about doing their platypus thing. They are quite fun to watch because they go around as if they're really, really busy, they're in a rush. Very cute, very fun to watch. As well as waterfalls and platypus, we also went and looked at the curtain fig tree. This is a tree which has been taken over by a parasite which has grown all these vines over the tree. Really impressive to see. It is huge. There's a very short, easy walk you can do on a boardwalk around it to get a few pictures and take in just the sheer size of it as well. Definitely worth having a look at. The next day we went and had a look at Milla Milla Falls. Now this is one of the most popular waterfalls in the area. It's very accessible. It is a very classic waterfall in terms of, if you were to draw a waterfall, this is probably what you would draw. A single waterfall kind of dropping over a cliff and a beautiful big pool in the bottom. The water was pretty cold, it wasn't too bad. The bottom of the waterfall though is very rocky. I would definitely recommend wearing water shoes or reef shoes, which have got a rubber sole. And you can also go behind the waterfall as well, climb up on the rocks. Again, having shoes on would be beneficial because it was quite slippery. This is a very famous spot for the Peter Andre Mysterious Girl video, so of course we had to reenact that and do the hair flick along with all the other tourists that were there. As I said, a very, very busy spot. If you get there fairly early, it will be quieter, but also a bit colder. Now there are toilets there and there are also areas that you can sit and have a bit of a picnic on the grass as well, which is really nice. To Alinja Falls, I believe it's pronounced, and Zealy Falls as well. These are very close to Milla Milla Falls. You can do them as a bit of a circuit. So we went down and had a look at one of them. We didn't do any swimming there and viewed another one from just a viewing platform above it. Next day we were still heading south and we were heading on to Townsville. We stopped at Babinda Boulders in the morning and this was great. I would actually recommend this far more than Mossman Gorge. Far quieter, a lot more space to spread out, and it was a very easy walk down from the car park, so you don't have to pay to get on a bus or anything like that. Really good spot to just relax in the water. Most of it is fairly shallow. There are some deeper bits that you can jump off rocks and swim in, and we really enjoyed it, particularly having seen Mossman Gorge a few days earlier and how full on busy that was. Babinda Boulders was just a much more relaxed atmosphere. that afternoon we just did a big drive and punched it down to Townsville. So there were quite a few spots that we missed on the way. This trip, it was only done over 3 weeks. So it's a big distance. We knew it was going to be go, 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 but we really wanted to pick our spots to be able to spend a couple of nights at, rather than trying to see everything. We didn't do Magnetic Island, for example. Everyone who goes there raves about it, says it's so much fun. You can hire those little bright pink topless cars to drive around the island on, or a scooter. People say it's great there. We just didn't have enough time to go there. We didn't want to kind of rush and try and do it in a morning or something like that. We stopped off in Townsville literally for one night. We went out to a place which was on the water to have some dinner, which was really nice, and then headed back to our accommodation. We also left really early in the morning because we are heading down to Early Beach. We had a ferry that we were hopping on, and I think we had pre-booked it, so we had to be there in time and hop on our ferry over to Hamilton Island. We headed straight to Early Beach. We contacted a backpackers far in advance to ask them if we could park up our car there for a few days. They said yes. We had to pay them, I want to say it was maybe $10 or $20 a day just to leave our car parked up there. We'd actually done this before when Tom and I had been down there and done a sailing trip. We had been in a small camper van, and we also parked up at, it was probably the same backpackers that we parked up at. They just had a space out the back where you just squeeze your car in and leave it there. So we went out to Hamilton Island. Like I said, I have done a separate video. It'll come out after this video, and it'll give you a really in-depth look at Hamilton Island, where you can stay, and all the amazing activities you can do there. Highly recommend heading out to Hamilton Island. If not, jump on a multi-day sailing trip there. There are ones for all sorts of budgets there. So the one that Tom and I did many years ago was a backpackers one. Didn't cost much at all. I want to say it was like $150, $180 per person. 2 nights, 3 days, fully catered. You could bring your own drink. You slept on the boat. Really fun. Like I said, they have ones which are more party boats as well, with like slides that come off the side. Whole different range of tours that you can do there out to that part of the reef and all the different islands. Would definitely recommend spending a few days there. Early Beach itself as well is a really nice town. Yes, it is busy. It is quite a backpacker kind of town, but they have a really nice waterfront which has a kind of lagoon pool area that you can swim in. And it also has a couple of different marinas which are nice to walk around. Plenty of places for food, drink, lots of accommodation there. So that is definitely a spot to add to your list if you're coming to Queensland. After our time on Hamilton Island was over, it was time to pick up the car. Now, like I said, we parked it at Backpackers. We parked there in a camper van previously, and this time with our hire car. Both times, no issues at all. We came back, everything was still there. The car wasn't damaged in any way. Picked up the car and we headed straight for Bundaberg. So we were going to do a tour the next day out to Lady Musgrave Island. So we did miss places like Yeppoon. We missed 1770 and Agnes Water. There's a few islands off those areas as well, which are worth checking out. So those are on the list for next time when we have a bit more time to actually pull in and stop at these places. Again, we just did an Airbnb in Bundaberg. We were just there for the one night. The next day we did our full day tour out to Lady Musgrave Island. So this was a full day tour, morning tea, lunch, afternoon tea. I believe you could also buy extra food or you could buy drinks on the boat as well. Now, the sailing trip out to Lady Musgrave from Bundaberg was a fair old slog. I think it must have been around an hour sailing, and it was pretty rough. I'm not someone who really gets that seasick, and even I was like, oh, this is bad. There were a lot of people being sick, a lot of people being unwell. My advice, if you're going on it, is to sit outside on the front of the boat. We got out to Musgrave Island eventually in one piece. And the first thing we did was hopped on a glass bottom boat tour. This was really cool. I hadn't been on one before, and we went all over the reef and they pointed out all the different coral and sea life there. We then got taken to the island to do a short walking tour. Got dropped off at one end and then picked up at another end. A really interesting island. It has so much bird life on it. It is unreal. You do have to watch where you're walking and what is above you, but really nice to walk through. We had a tour guide there as well who talked us through the history of the island and all the different marine life and bird life. They even have rangers who stay on the island for weeks at a time to study the turtle nesting, study the different birds that are there. When we came onto the other side of the island, there was also an area where there were small black-tip reef sharks, so young ones that were kind of swimming in the shallows, which was kind of cool to see. Then it was back to the boat to have a little bit of lunch and a chance to jump in the water and go snorkeling. So we hopped off the back of the boat and we snorkeled around some of the shallower reef, and we could kind of do whatever we wanted. They did have a few buoys, you know, the floating balls, so that you could see kind of where you should keep within. They obviously didn't want people to be heading out to sea. We hung around the reef for a bit. We actually saw quite a big shark there, which was quite cool to see. I thought it was quite cool. My sister did not appreciate me pointing it out. And we saw lots of other fish, and then we started seeing turtles, and there were so many turtles there. A few different breeds. Sorry, I can't remember exactly what breeds they were. They may have been loggerhead or leatherback or maybe green turtles. Some of them were really big. They were huge, and they didn't really care that we were there either. Sometimes you see turtles and they kind of go off in the other direction. But the spot that we were in was actually a turtle cleaning area. The turtles will kind of swim round and round in circles or in loops, and fish will come and clean all the different, I guess, bacteria or algae that might be on them. Compared to other snorkeling trips we've done, this one was good in that you could kind of do what you want. You could go off, obviously within limits, by yourself or as a couple or as a group, rather than having to be all together. So that meant that if you did spot a turtle, you weren't trying to kind of fight with 50 other people to see it and get a picture and swim next. So often when I had found these turtles and took these pictures and videos, I was just by myself, just swimming along with this turtle, which was amazing. It was such a special experience, and to be able to see this many turtles up close was just fantastic. Despite the rough boat ride there and back, would definitely recommend coming out there for a day trip. You will almost guarantee get to see turtles, which is fantastic. Next, it was on to one of the most exciting parts of our trip. We were heading to Fraser Island. When most people come over to Australia from overseas and do the East Coast, this is one of the places they absolutely have to go to. It is very popular for all sorts of different travelers, backpackers, families, couples, people on four-wheel drive trip. There is so much to see and do there. Now, we were only there for, I think, 2 nights, and we stuck to the East Coast. We just saw the main sites, but even that, we were really impressed and definitely want to go back and check out the West Coast too. We hired a car, I think it was from Atlas Four-Wheel Drive Hire, and we could leave our hire car there with them pretty securely, pick up one of their 4-wheel drives, and we got the ferry over from Riverheads, and that dropped us directly at Kingfisher Resort. Because we weren't set up to camp or anything like that, we stayed at Kingfisher Resort, so we just booked a small 2-bedroom kind of holiday unit that they had there. It was pretty good. It was fairly expensive from memory. We couldn't park the car directly outside our accommodation. We had to park it kind of up a hill, which was a bit annoying, getting all our stuff in and out of it every day. The accommodation itself was nice enough, but one of the rooms was a bunk room, even though we booked it for 4 adults, which we thought was a little bit strange and maybe an oversight by them to put adults in a bunk room. It wasn't the end of the world. We just had to feel like kids for a couple of nights sleeping in bunk beds. As I said, we were only there for a couple of nights, so we just stopped off at all the main spots on the East Coast. So we explored Lake Mackenzie, which was really beautiful. The water there is just so crystal clear and blue. It's very, very cold though. It was much colder than we had expected, but a really nice spot, white sandy beach. We spent a few hours there just swimming and sitting, enjoying the sun. We also went and looked at the Mahino shipwreck as well, which was pretty cool. We went up to Champagne Pools and had a little bit of a swim there as well. I don't think we were there on the best tide, so we didn't get the kind of perfect bubbling champagne experience, but still a really cool spot. We didn't go any north of that. We didn't go through Nagala Rocks or anything. We just didn't have the time. And we were also in a higher four-wheel drive, so we didn't really have much gear in terms of if we got stuck. We also weren't with anyone else, so we didn't have anyone to get us out if we got bogged. And we also went and explored Eli Creek, and we spent several hours there floating up and down the creek, just chilling out, and that is a really, really beautiful spot. We did explore some of the inland tracks and went and saw some of the other lakes they have there. So I think there might be Lake Wobby that we went and saw. It was kind of nice, but it's got nothing on Lake Mackenzie. We saw heaps of wildlife on Fraser Island. We saw lots of dingoes. Obviously, you need to be very aware of dingoes. Don't feed them, don't approach them. If you do see one and you're outside your car, don't run away from it. It will probably chase you. We didn't have any issues with them. If they ever came near us while we were out doing something at the car, for Eli Creek, for example, they do hang around because that's where a lot of people will have lunch. If they did come up to us, we just kind of clapped our hands, made a bit of noise, and they do kind of get the message and go away. Some of the ones you might see might have tags in their ears, and that means that they have been identified as being pests for food. They might have been identified as possibly being aggressive. Give them a wide berth. Don't try and interact with them. They are wild dogs. They are not pet dogs, because if you do feed them, if they do become aggressive, they get destroyed. We also saw a snake as well, which we accidentally ran over. It was fine though. We ran over it on sand, so I think it just kind of squashed down into the sand. We think it might have been a taipan, which is one of the most venomous, deadly snakes in the world. So it was very angry. We just took a quick picture and then legged it. Overall, we really liked our time on Fraser Island. We were only there for a very short amount of time. If we were to go back again, I reckon we would take probably a couple of weeks. We'd probably take our little hybrid caravan that we've got now and head over to the west side, because I hear and I've seen from people's YouTube videos, the beaches there are just stunning, beautiful, calm, blue, turquoise water. So getting around the island was very easy in the car. It's not that hard to get lost. You do just have to be mindful of the tide times as well. If you are trying to get down the beach and it's high tide, it's worth checking your map and making sure that there's an inland route that you can take. Just bear in mind that the inland routes, they do take a lot longer than what you think. You can't go too fast. Often they are single lane as well, so you do need to be mindful of traffic coming the other way. When we were there, it was, I think, about a week before Prince William and Kate arrived on Fraser Island, and the island looked beautiful. It was very clean. They were grading all the roads to make sure that the royals didn't have to go over any bumps. That was a bit interesting to see. This is the end of our trip back to Riverheads. Now, it was our responsibility to actually wash the four-wheel drive, so we took it to the four-wheel drive wash that they've got there and gave it a really good clean. Once we'd given the car a good wash, we dropped it back to the hire place and we picked up our other hire car. We pretty much just headed straight for Brisbane. Did stop off in Noosa to have some lunch. We just found a random place that was near the river, had a bit of seafood. It was quite nice. Now, I've heard it is a really beautiful spot, so again, that's one to add to the list to explore further in the future. We headed straight to Brisbane then after that, and we went our separate ways. So my sister and her husband flew back to the UK, and we headed back to Melbourne. This was a fantastic trip. I think we really got to see a lot of the highlights of the East Coast. Now, we didn't make it up as far as Cape York. You do really need a four-wheel drive to get up there, and that just wasn't going to work for us in our time frame and our budget, etc. I think we saw some great spots along the way. I would highly recommend spending a bit of time around the Daintree, seeing some lovely waterfalls, getting out to all the different freshwater waterholes that you can explore as well. There is just so much to see in that section of coastline. Ideally, you probably want about 2 or 3 months there to be able to explore all the different places. There are so many islands there to see as well. Now, it is expensive, particularly for accommodation compared to other states or areas in Australia. However, in most places you are staying quite close to the action. So for us, we stayed in Airbnbs. Apart from Hamilton Island, they were all quite well priced and they were quite close to kind of the attractions that we wanted to go see, or they were a very short drive. The good thing is as well that there are heaps of accommodation options compared to the West Coast, where you might go to a popular spot and you might have only 1 caravan park there or 2 caravan parks there. You might not have much choice at all. Whereas on the East Coast, because it is much more developed, you have heaps more options there in terms of places to stay. And then additionally, all the tours that you can do there. There are so many tours, so many different tourist attractions there. Some very expensive, some you can do for free as well. It is an area which is very rich in natural beauty. So if you're just going to Cape Tribulation Beach, for example, that's free and it's beautiful. Babinda Boulders, for example, free and beautiful. Some of the waterfalls as well. So there are lots of places that you can get to which are free and just really stunning spots to spend the day. If you are heading there though, I would definitely recommend budgeting for a trip out to an island, somewhere on the Great Barrier Reef, doing a snorkeling trip or boat trip. Fraser Island as well. So there's lots of different options there. We had our own four-wheel drive and did our own thing, but there were tag-along tours. You can also hop in the four-wheel drive tour buses there and do day trips from Hervey Bay as well. We stuck to the coast. There's also so many places inland as well to explore, which again is on our list for next time. The East Coast as well, it is very safe. It's very family friendly, couple friendly, solo travelers. It really does cater for everyone. That's a wrap on our Cairns to Brisbane video. I hope it has provided you with some inspiration for your next trip and shown you that you don't need a whole lot of time there in order to see some of the best spots. Next week, we've got our Hamilton Island video coming out. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that one. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below and I will see you in the next one.